What's up, guys? This is going to be a very special amp test week here at Sundown Audio. That's right, all week long, very special episodes coming here to the Sundown Audio unofficial YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed. I guarantee you're not going to want to miss these. What's up, guys? My name's Derek, and welcome back to the Sundown Audio unofficial YouTube channel. So just like you saw in the intro there, this week, all week long, we're going to be testing some amps. I mean, a lot of them. All new Salt amplifiers. Like you see, I have right here on the bench the big Salt 12. They're in stock. They've been shipping, and I pulled one of each straight out production run. Remember, I pulled several of each just to do some random testing, verify some things. So right here in the testing room, I've got the Salt 4, 6, 8, and 12K, doing a ton of testing, verifying things, checking things out, make sure they're performing flawlessly. I've already got some videos out there for the Salt 8 and the Salt 12. They're not super thorough videos. I think the Salt only has just a couple quick certified, uncertified runs on it. The 12, the Salt 12 video is pretty amazing. We because it's a huge amp and overpowers our test bench a little bit. It's so big, so we had to take the Salt 12, go wire it up into my personal SPL vehicle, Project SPL, because I got a massive cap bank in there, 100 caps to properly power it. So that's a pretty cool video. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's Sundown Audio's biggest amplifier ever. But this week, we're bringing you the ones you haven't seen yet, the 4 and the 6, and including diving into some more in-depth testing on that 8K and the Salt 12. We're also going to do some other stuff kind of out of the normal, including coming Thursday on Tech Time Thursday, we're going to be doing a how to set your gains video for your Salt amplifier. So I'm going to go through all of them, all 4 of them, the 4, 6, 8, and 12, and show you how to easily set your gains from home with minimal tools. So make sure you're subscribed, click it now. You're not going to want to miss this stuff coming up. Now, starting out, we're going to be doing a lot of Amp Dyno testing. As I'm sure you know, we have an Amp Dyno here. We use it a ton. And I got it hooked up right now in the Salt 12, doing a lot of work. So to prepare for some of the videos coming later this week, I feel like I need to do a very, very informative video all about the Amp Dyno and just some different little details, some very, very important details. So to some people, this might get boring. I'm sorry if that's the case, but I promise you to understand the videos coming later and understand a lot of stuff we're about to do, especially the very in-depth hardcore testing we're about to do and show on video to the Salt 12. You're gonna need to see what I'm gonna show you in this video. So don't skip ahead, don't miss a beat, watch this thing. We're gonna go over the Amp Dyno, the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, let's start out by talking about the Amp Dyno that we have right here. This is the SMD AD1. AD1 stands for Amplifier Dyno, which you can see right here. And essentially it's a tool that I love. I'm super grateful it exists now, but it's a tool for testing amplifiers and measuring their output with some different variables. So I'm sure a lot of people probably heard of dynos in reference to an engine dyno or a car dyno of some sorts, where an engine dyno, you would take the engine of your car and bolt it up and measure your engine's horsepower, crank horsepower, or a full car dyno that you're going to drive your car on, get the wheels on the roller, strap it down, and you're going to actually check your vehicle's horsepower at those rear wheels. Well, the Amp Dyno does a lot of the same thing. We take our amplifier, we wire it up, we can set it up for different conditions as far as different, basically different resistances, some 1 ohm, 2 ohm, 4 ohm. You can hear a lot of talk about that. You can, on our test bench, we can adjust it just do some different voltages here and there and just run it through a whole gamut of tests. And similar to how on an engine dyno, you're gonna see power at different RPMs. Here you're gonna see output power at just different loads, different voltages, different things we can set up and do. Now, I'm super grateful it exists because it is, in a way, before the Amp Dyno lately, people do some really sketchy things. They try to do things where they just do a DMM to measure the output, the voltage, or a clamp meter, and those don't quite accurately measure an amplifier's output. You can put it on there and you can cheat it really easily. You can spike the hell out of it, and it doesn't measure everything appropriately. Well, the Amp Dyno does. So it essentially also calculates your distortion, your clipping. It figures that in, and it gives you an accurate readout without just spiking those outputs and making a bunch of unnecessary, unusable power. Now, one very, very important thing to note is the Amp Dyno uses resistors. It is a resistive load. So here's where some of the controversy comes in. Now, for me, I understand and I'm fine. I know it's a resistive load. When I set it up to 1 ohm, 2 ohm, 4 ohm, it means I set it to a 1 ohm load and it stays at a 1 ohm load. The controversy comes in, people are like, well, that's not real world. Here's what's up. In real world, when you get some speakers and you wire it to 1 ohm on your amplifier, it does not stay at 1 ohm. See, speakers are what's called a reactive load. So you wire to 1, you're going to have a reactance. You're going to have what people usually refer to as impedance rise or box rise. You're going to have a reactance, and that impedance is going to go up. In my experience, you're typically going to have somewhere between 3 and 4 times. Those results can vary depending on a lot of things. So if you wire to a 1 ohm load, you can very easily have a rise, get a reactance up to 3 ohms or 4 ohms. That's what's different between real world and the Amp Dyno, that when I wire to 1, it's going to stay there. All right, now one thing real quick I want to put in. A lot of people get their amplifiers they know you can beat them a little hard and run them under 1 ohm. You know, you can run them under their rated impedance. A lot of your Korean amplifiers are very good at this. People like to run amps at half ohm. So because they get to run them at half in a daily scenario, you don't actually stay at half ohm. You wire it to half, you're going to have a reactance. You're going to end up somewhere around 1.5, 2 ohms-ish, give or take a little bit, depending on the scenario. So all the time, people make comments about wire it to half on the Amp Dyno. Well, that's just unreasonable. A half ohm resistive load is very, very tough on an amplifier. So that's why you don't see me do it a whole lot here on the channel. It's unrealistic. In order for that to be similar to something you would see in the real world, I would have to wire lower. So where I can tell you where you wire at 1 ohm with a speaker, you have a reactance up to say 3 or 4. Say it's 4, because I can do that on the Amp Dyno. Well, the same 4 ohm resistive load and power output you see on the Amp Dyno is going to be the same 4 ohm power output you're going to see on your reactive load with a speaker. So that's where things become comparable. All right. A lot of times, and then lately I've been putting up some what I call SPL test type videos. That's where I go below 1 ohm on the Amp Dyno and I'll wire to say 0.8. So I'll do a 0.8 resistive load so it stays at that 0.8 and get a little extra juice out that amplifier and show what it can do. Now in the real world, that's similar to wiring down to about 1/4 ohm, which a lot of people do. All my amplifiers in Project SPL wire to 1/4 ohm each. Reactive, I end up right now, I think I'm around 0.9. So that can be up or down a little bit. My personal reactive load is about 0.9, but that's similar to being at 0.8. So if you have a reactance to 0.8 in your real world scenario on an SPL test where you're gonna be wired to 1/4, you're gonna rise to that 0.8, well, you're gonna get similar powers to me wiring the Amp Dyno to 0.8, setting up for that and doing that. So that's your difference. That's where things also become comparable. So half ohm on an Amp Dyno, that would be probably to like wiring about 1/8 ohm in the real world. And I highly recommend do not do that, ever do that. It's just not good for your equipment. You run a very, very high risk of blowing your stuff up. So don't do that. Now, here's where the Amp Dyno becomes just a great tool in car audio. It's given us a completely even platform for manufacturers to test their amplifiers and show what they do. So instead of having this Joe Blow and this guy over here doing some of these random clamp tests and they're spiking them or they're doing things wrong or they're not paying attention to stuff right, and you get all kinds of wild varying results. Well, now manufacturers can all have this one machine. You have one machine that's the same for everybody. Everybody uses it equally, and it just gives you a more level testing field for everybody to say, hey, I tested my amp on this machine, it did this. Another manufacturer say, hey, I tested my amp on this machine and it did this. So that's where the Amp Dyno is super useful, and I'm extremely grateful that it exists, and I use it all the time. I think it's awesome. You can find all kinds of Amp Dyno videos right here on YouTube from all kinds of guys. Plenty. It's become a regular thing. I've made Amp Test Tuesday, which I totally took that idea from Steve Mead, who, that's why the Amp Dyno is named after. That's why it's the SMD, Steve Mead. I just figured if he already had the name, it worked great. It was super catchy. Like, what do I look like doing a Amp Test Wednesday or an Amp Test Thursday? I'm like, let's keep on. Let's do the Amp Test Tuesday. Keep that tradition rolling. But this is where the Amp Dyno comes into play. It's great. It's awesome. And if you got any questions about an amplifier, don't be afraid. Hit up YouTube. Look it up. There's probably an Amp Dyno video out there for it. If there's a Sundown amplifier that you can't find an Amp Dyno video for, let me know. I've done a video on almost every Sundown amplifier in existence. We have some new prototypes that are coming very soon. I've shown a few off here and there. We got the new Salt amps, so those are coming this week. The Amp Dynos for them. Some new SFB amps on the way. I think I've covered about all of them, but if I haven't, I promise you guys, those videos will be coming really, really soon. But if there's a Sundown Amp Dyno video you're looking for, it's probably right here on the channel. They're all grouped in a playlist. Go check that out. Next, I want to give y'all a quick rundown of kind of how to use the Amp Dyno. So some of the basics, we're going to wire it up. The inputs you'll see here on the front, like right here and right here. This is where I'll hook our speaker outputs coming from the amplifier going into the Amp Dyno. Now, if you're doing a 2-channel amplifier, you'll have to use both mono block. Because of the 2 outputs coming out, I wire 1 to each. Sometimes we'll wire a jumper for a mono block that has a single. Basically hook it up. You need to have some kind of test bench or power supply to power amplifier. Figure that'll be obvious and common sense. But we're gonna dig into just using the Amp Dyno part. So to start, I'm gonna have all my settings kind of flat. I'm having my crossover wide open, no bass boost, nothing like that. My gain is going to be all the way down on my amplifier. If you have a remote knob, make sure it is turned all the way up so it doesn't interfere or just disconnect it completely for the initial setup. Then what you're gonna do, the Amp Dyno comes with a CD. It comes with tests. We don't use a CD. We actually downloaded the tones, which you can do from the website, and we use a thumb drive. So some of our tracks are going to look a little off than, you know, if you're used to using the tracks for the Amp Dyno. Some of our numbers are going to be a little different, but that's because we have them on the thumb drive. But first things first, we're going to go to the DD1, and we're going to do the DD1 setting, and we're going to properly adjust the gains on our amp for testing here on the Amp Dyno. So we're going to choose that, and it's going to give you the instructions right here on the screen. Set your head unit volume to a minimum. So just for the sake of this, we're going to turn it all the way down. Start track 12 or 13. The difference is frequency. So track 12, which we're on right here, for us is 5, but you can see track 12 is our 40 hertz reference tone. So we've got that going on. Press next. Now adjust head unit to max undistorted volume. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll up on our volume, and every now and then you'll see some flickers, but we're going to roll up till we see the distortion really roll in and turn solid, and I see it flickering, and bam. So there we go. On our particular Pioneer head unit that we use, that's at volume 50, we're going to get some solid distortion. Now, I like to play it safe. I don't want any clipping coming from my head unit, and that's something very important to note. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So instead of running it, 50 is distortion. I'm going to turn it down below. 49 will look okay, but I see still a little bit of flicker there. 48, we seem to be pretty clean. No issue, no distortion. Now, one thing I want to note. So this is using a DD1 that's built in the Amp Dyno, just like the little handheld DD1 that you can buy and use on, buy online and use. Now, because you use a DD1 doesn't automatically cover all and make sure it's all set and it's all good. You have to make sure you set your head unit properly, and you have to make sure the media that you're using is also set properly. Those are two very important steps I've found a lot of people miss. But here we go. We got our head unit set to a safe volume at volume 48. Yep, no clipping, and we're gonna press next. Now we're gonna turn our gain up. You're gonna see our distortion come on as we crank that gain. So here we go, turning it up. There we got some clipping being introduced. You can even hear our amplifier probably making some buzzing right there. Next, we're gonna change tracks. So here we go, we're on track 14. Next again, and now we're gonna set our overlap. So we're currently at 19 dB. I prefer around an 8 dB of overlap. So if you wanna know what that does, essentially, overlap is the amount of, and I'm trying to put this in really basic terms, it's basically the amount of extra volume that the Amp Dyno will give the amplifier after it reaches distortion. So if I set it at 0, it's kind of gonna ramp up. And we'll see this, we'll show it on the screen. You'll get a slow ramp up to it. The lower the overlap you set, the slower it ramps up. But if you leave it at 0, it's kind of only gonna ramp up to a certain point. If you give it a little bit of overlap, which I like 8 dB, seems to work good for me, it's just the amount of ramp up it does past reading distortion. So we're good. We've got our overlap set to 8. That's where I like to run it. Click done. It's gonna tell us to mute the signal or pause. So we're gonna pause. Now, we've got our gain set, DD1, all that stuff's handled. Let me go through real quick, show you some of the stuff that it can do for testing. So we got certified, uncertified, and dynamic power. And they'll kind of tell you exactly what they are. So we'll choose certified, click this, we are mono. Next, we can choose different impedances. So you got 4.2, 1.3, 1, 0.8, 0.6, and 0.5. And remember, these are resistive loads, not reactive. So wiring to half ohm here on the Amp Dyno is not like wiring to half ohm with your subwoofers. So that's why you don't see me do that a whole lot. It is very, very tough on amplifiers. So say we want to do a 4 ohm test, we'll choose that. Set our track. Now you can test this also at different frequencies, and they all come with the CD or with the tones. Typically for bass amps, mono blocks, you would use 40 hertz. So for us, it's our track 12, which would be normally track 4. So it tells us to go to track 4 and 9. Those are some different frequencies, but track 4 is our 40 hertz reference tone. And this one isn't going to be a solid tone like the track 5 that we use to set our gains. This one's going to start at a low volume, and it's going to ramp up, and that's why you see the numbers on the screen ramp up. So then we go to start, and this is where it's going to kind of tell you what the certified run is. So certified dyno run at less than 1% distortion. So this is a super, super clean signal you're gonna get when you do a certified run. All right, now, I just want to show y'all kind of where it gives you a detail on the screen of what that is. So now let's go to uncertified. What does uncertified mean? So we're gonna run back through here, mono, jumpers, 4 ohm, start dyno. Uncertified dyno run to clipping. So the difference between certified and uncertified, certified is going to take you up to where it's going to be very, very little distortion, less than 1% distortion. Uncertified is going to give you a little more distortion. It's going to take you right on up to full clipping. In my experience, this is the most realistic. I tell you, when I go to shows, everybody's running their stuff right up to full clipping or into clipping a little bit. But if you want, in my opinion, the most real world results to what you're gonna see in your car, what everyone's doing when they set their stuff up just below that clip point, it's gonna be uncertified, because this is gonna run up and measure power right up to clipping. All right, so next one, we're gonna back out of here, is gonna be dynamic. Now, I don't like dynamic very much. Some people do, so every now and then I still show it off. But a dynamic run is basically a super, super fast bam. And right here on the screen tells you dynamic RMS power burst dyno run. So to do dynamic, you have to run a completely different tone. It's not a ramp up tone like these other ones. It is a super fast click, click, click. And you'll even hear it and see it when you do the test on the screen. It's just a super fast burst to get a lot of instant power. It's almost like a max rated type deal I joke around about dynamic power being like a strike of lightning, just that fast jolt. So that's why I don't like it. I don't think it's very real world because nobody does these quick, fast, short, split-second hits. Anybody that's using their amplifiers daily, they're beating on it. They're doing continuous bass. So you're not going to quite see the dynamic power. All right, so we just showed you how to do all the setup, how to use the Amp Dyno, how to run through in the different modes, what they mean. I've told you why I think the Amp Dyno is such a great tool, how it levels the playing field. Now, let's go kind of on the back end and let's show you the limitations. What can't you do with the Amp Dyno? And that's one of the reasons I've got the big Sundown Salt 12 here on the bench, because it's one of the few amplifiers in existence that can do this. And that is what I would call max out the Amp Dyno. So a lot of people don't know, don't understand, and there's a lot of little details that go with this, is the Amp Dyno, it's only good up to a certain power level. At least this one, hopefully they're working on a newer, bigger, better version to beef it up, because we kind of need it over here to test this Salt 12 to its full capability. But let's just go ahead and show you. So we're gonna say certified run, it's a mono amp, and 4 ohm. Now, I'll tell you ahead of time, at 4 ohm, and this is different with every impedance, so this isn't the same. So it's not like it's limited to one specific power across the board. It can only read up to a certain power level at 4, 2, 1, etc. It's different at every impedance. So we're set up here for a certified 4 ohm run. Our Salt 12 is on, and let's start our head unit. A few seconds in, you're gonna see it come on and start slowly ramping that power up all the way up till our distortion light comes on. But first, bam, we're gonna see it go over. Now we hit distortion. Now, in case you can't see that good, let me get this camera in here. Over. All right, so what does that mean? Well, it means we exceeded the limit of the Amp Dyno. We exceeded what it can accurately read. Now, it still runs in the background. Our tone is still running, our amplifier is still putting out power, our amplifier is still seeing that 4 ohm resistive load of the Amp Dyno, but it can't physically, I don't want to say it can't measure, but it can't measure, at least it can't show it on the screen how much power it's getting. But everything does still run in the background, you just don't quite get to see it here. Now, let's do a reset, and we're gonna do this in a slower version so I can dial this in for y'all. Now, for this purpose, I'm going to take our remote knob here, and I'm gonna use it to slowly roll up. So instead of using the reference tone that has the ramp up on it, we're gonna go back to our reference tone. This is 40 hertz. This is the one we used to set our DD1 originally. I'm gonna start playing it, and then you're gonna see me start to roll up here, and you'll see the power start to kick in. I'm gonna roll up some more, and our power go up some more. So the Amp Dyno is limited to about 4,900 watts at 4 ohm. So I'm gonna try and get it right there. If I can roll it slow enough, you'll see it get just a hair like 4920, 4957 and over. So there you go. If you don't believe me, we'll do it again. So let me get my track reset. Amp Dyno's reset. We're gonna start slowly rolling. You're gonna see our power start coming in over there. 26, 3,000, 35, 45. Come on, 49.22. I'm trying to barely, and over. So there we go. That is some of the limitations of the Amp Dyno. Now, for the most part, that scales up exactly double, as in 4,900 at 4, 9,800 at 2, about 19,600-ish at 1. So it doubles each step of the way, and unfortunately, that's our limitations of the Amp Dyno. All right, guys, so that covers about everything. jokingly saying the good, the bad, the ugly of the Amp Dyno. Again, I love this tool. We use it a ton. I'm glad it's given a just awesome, even playing field for all manufacturers to test their amps on this one machine that's accessible to everybody. And but it does have its limitations. Salt 12. So what do we do? Well, I got an idea and I've tested it and it works. So coming this week, we will be doing some more Salt 12 Amp Dyno tests, and I'm gonna show you how to get it to read. So where I just showed you, we did a quick 4-ohm test. The Amp Dyno cuts out and says over. But I also mentioned to you, it keeps running in the background. The tone keeps playing, keeps ramping up. Our amplifier keeps putting out power all the way up till it does detect that distortion. You just don't get to see it on the screen. So here's what we do. That's why I've got my trusty DMM here, and I'm wired in to the outputs of that amplifier, the inputs of the Amp Dyno. So all we gotta do, hook that up, set it to read our AC voltage output, because keep in mind, amplifiers take DC power in, but they put out AC power, that alternating current, voltage and amperage. So we're gonna read that AC voltage going into our Amp Dyno. We're gonna watch it on the screen, and we're gonna let it ramp up and get to where we see the voltage max out right before it starts to clip. And it's pretty simple. A lot of times we would do clamps and volts and all this stuff, and we do have clamps here. We use all kinds of wild tools, clamps, and even the whole test bench is a tool to me that charges everything. But we don't need to do that because we have a fixed resistive load. If we didn't have a fixed resistive load, if this was a subwoofer, if we were in a car where we have an unknown reactance, then we would have to check the AC voltage and the AC current, do some math, calculate our reactance. In this instance, it's a resistive load. I can set it to a set 4 ohms, so we can measure our AC voltage output up to the point the Amp Dyno is gonna let us know when we touch distortion. So all we gotta do is see what we get right at that point before it starts to distort, take that clean AC voltage, divide it by our impedance, which set to a fixed 4 to 1 ohm. That gives us our current. Current times voltage equals power. That's coming this week. Make sure you subscribe. We're going to get the Salt 12 to test on the Amp Dyno, show its power. You're not going to miss it. There's already a few teasers out there. I don't know if I put them on the Instagram, Sundown Audio Unofficial, but I know I put some. I've been doing some little teaser videos all for the past week on my Facebook. Feel free to go check them out if you want. Got some pretty amazing, I mean, completely awesome 4 ohm power from this guy. So I also mentioned, besides the amp testing and the dynos and checking power outputs, this Thursday, on Tech Time Thursday, I'm gonna go over how to set your gains at home using minimal tools. And it's gonna be basically using a DMM, something anybody can afford. You can get them dirt cheap. Even for this test, you don't need a super fancy expensive one. And I'll go ahead and let you know now, this is how we're gonna do it. By using the built-in DD1 on the Amp Dyno, which the DD1 has a whole little controversy thing going with it. We'll go over that in that video. I'm not gonna do it now, get this one too crazy long. But I'm gonna get all the Salt amps, 4, 6, 8, and 12. We're gonna put them on the bench. We're gonna hook them to the Amp Dyno, and we're gonna use the DD1 to tune them in. When doing that, same as I got it hooked up right now, we're gonna tune it in right to the point of distortion. I'm going to show you the clean AC voltage output that we're gonna get. And then it's as simple as this. If you don't have access to a DD1, well, your clean AC voltage output is gonna be pretty similar to what I get here. The only thing I can't do for you is show you how to set your head unit. So I got a solution for that. We'll go over that on this Thursday, Tech Time Thursday, how to set your gains. I'm gonna use the DD1 here for you guys so that you can easily set the gains on your Salt amps at home. Make sure you subscribe. You're not gonna miss that video. All right, so that's it. I think I've covered about everything I need to about testing and amps and resistive versus reactive, which is very, very important. How the Amp Dyno works, the limitations, the good, the bad. I believe I've got it all. So this information will help y'all to understand all the stuff coming this week in the testing. It could be a ton of testing. Whew. Now, I'm not gonna let y'all go just like that. If you stuck around with me this long and watched through the whole video and not giving up, we're gonna do a little treat. We're gonna go ahead and do a quick amp test on a Salt 12 right here, right now. Let me set this camera up down there and get it in position. All right, guys, here we go. Got everything kind of prepped up. Our amp is on, our track is keyed up, our Amp Dyno is on and set to an uncertified dyno run at 1 ohm. So this is gonna be a dyno run right up to clipping. My favorite type, just like I think everybody runs in the vehicle. I'm also gonna give you a little preview. We've got our DMM set up right here. It is set to read the AC voltage output. So you're gonna watch this ramp up just as that tone ramps up in our power, and you're gonna be able to kind of relate that a little bit and see it right at the point this red distortion light here comes on, and we're gonna see what kind of power we can get. But first things first, I've got to kick our chargers in, get some voltage rolling, see what I can do, because this Salt 12 is a monster on the test bench. So we run a pretty good test bench here. Nice 14-volt battery bank from Excess Power, awesome D1400 batteries. We got a few Excess Power cap banks built in there to try and hold the power. But this Salt 12 is an absolute monster. Rated 12 volts, and if you don't know yet, you're about to get a good view here of what kind of power we can actually do. So here we go, y'all ready? We are running, power is ramping up. You can see our AC voltage climbing, and bam, there we go, guys. Now, I didn't get to watch our AC voltage. Y'all can rewind and look at that. I'll check it out later. But you can look at that power. Let me move this out of the way and make sure y'all get a good view here. And if you can't, let's get on in there a little bit at that 12.5 volts, 1 ohm, 19,449 watts. Holy cow. Almost 20K. Yeah, I'm gonna say almost. 19,449 watts here, live on video from that Salt 12 amplifier. What do y'all think, guys? Lots more Amp Dyno action coming this week. Make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget to check out sundownunofficial.com for your Sundown tees, hoodies, all that cool stuff. We are working on some awesome t-shirt designs coming this year, so keep an eye out on the website. Make sure to subscribe, all that good stuff. If you like what we're doing, thumbs up. We'll catch y'all next time.